Good evening, everybody. And for those who are not from London, welcome to the greatest city on earth. It is such a pleasure to be here, and it would be a pleasure in any circumstances. But tonight, even more so, as I welcome the Booth School's renewed investment in the London's business community with this beautiful, stunning facility. And I'm very delighted to welcome the leadership of the university to London. So Paul, very heartily welcome. And we are also joined by Madhav Rajan, Dean of the Booth School, and Randy Krosner, Deputy Dean of the Booth School. It is truly a privilege to be with you all tonight. And I look forward to hearing from each of you later in the program. Universities are one of the key components to London's success. They are home to innovation and the talent that makes London such a great place to do business. And this campus is at the very heart of our great city and at the center of the increasing trade and investment links between London and Chicago. This is particularly fitting because Booth is playing an increasingly vital role in the investment between our business communities, most recently hosting the Governor Pritzker and executives from Chicago and London companies last November. Everyone here this evening knows that the synergies between London and Chicago runs deep. In particular, and very close to my heart, because I'm a fintech entrepreneur, have mutual strengths in finance and tech, reflected in our cities and in the business school's 9 Nobel Prizes. I'm sure you've all seen as you walked in the Nobel Wall. Isn't it absolutely amazing? Can we have a round of applause for that? Not many universities in the world can claim something like that. It's absolutely astounding, and I'm very, very proud that you have chosen London for this new campus. But more widely, the University of Chicago is driving innovation in life sciences, nanotechnology, quantum physics, and the technology that we need for a more sustainable and inclusive future. So it is not surprising that the Booth alumni, exemplified by Mr. David Booth himself, lead many of the startups we welcome here in London. I look forward to helping support startups that emerge from the University of Chicago's world-class accelerator program, the New Venture Challenge, which we are pleased runs here in London, which is Europe's tech hub, as well as in Chicago and in Hong Kong. The New Venture Challenge is a great example of the tremendous economic, environmental, and social impact universities can have in our communities. Good growth will be the foundation of our future success. And to that end, I'm fortunate that in addition to my role as the Deputy Mayor of London for Business, I'm also the Chair of London and Partners, the Business Growth and Destination Agency for London. And I sometimes describe my job as the traveling salesman for London. I travel around the world selling London, but I honestly feel so passionate when you've got such a great product. It doesn't need selling. And Sadiq Khan and I often debate who's got the best job in the world. And I think I win. Don't you think that? Our mission in London is to drive growth that is resilient, sustainable, and inclusive. And some of the Chicago startups that have launched in London, for example, G2 and Cameo, are critical to that. And at the other end of the scale, we also work closely with Chicago corporates and companies such as Boeing and McDonald's participating in our London Open Innovation Fellowship. So since opening of our London and Partners office in Chicago in 2018. We have also introduced Illinois companies to fast-growing London tech startups in mobility, in fintech, in PropTech, digital health through our Mayor's International Business Program. The relationship between London and Chicago is stronger than ever. And it is exemplified by Booth, its students, its alumni, and long may that continue. So thank you very much for having me, and I hope you have a wonderful city. And can I just say, put a bit of a plug for those people who are just visiting London especially for this event, and I know there are many of them. Whilst you are there, weather is fantastic. Enjoy London, spend your money, and enjoy the very best that London has to offer. Thank you very much.
Please welcome the Dean and George Pratt Schultz Professor of Accounting at Chicago Booth, Madhav Rajan.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajesh, Deputy Mayor Agarwal, for that warm welcome and for celebrating this exciting milestone with us. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here today. This seems like the end of a very, very long journey. On behalf of the University of Chicago and everybody connected to Chicago Booth, I'm just thrilled to welcome all of you to the spectacular new London campus. I'm very grateful to all of our alumni and friends from the university and the Booth community who have taken the time to be here and celebrate this long-awaited official opening with us. As many of you know, we had intended to do this, who's counting, 18 or so months ago, but were delayed for unforeseen reasons. This evening, we're thrilled to have UChicago President Paul Alivisatos, who will deliver an address on behalf of the university. Thank you for coming, Paul. I'll introduce you in just a bit. Go on a second. Want to thank our esteemed panelists as well. Derek Douglas, Vice President for Civic Engagement and External Affairs at UChicago, who's here. Carolyn Grossman, Executive Director of the Rustandi Center for Social Sector Innovation and Adjunct Professor of Strategy at Chicago Booth. And I want to also thank Randy Krosner, Deputy Dean for Executive Programs, and the Norm Bobbins Professor of Economics at Booth for moderating the panel discussion to come. Our distinguished alum, council member, and trustee David Booth was scheduled to be on the panel, but regretfully had to change his plans just a couple of days ago. So the theme for this evening's conversation centers on the university's and Booth's commitment to global leadership, to creating the next generation of leaders, investing in the future of business in London and EMEA, and the significance of the new campus location in the heart of London's business community. Everything we do and everything you'll hear in the panel is very much in keeping with Chicago Booth's mission, which I like to point out for universities, the mission doesn't change, right? It's been the same for 124 years, or 125th this next year, to produce knowledge with enduring impact and to influence and educate current and future leaders. And the school continues to deliver on that mission in many innovative ways, thanks to our outstanding faculty, staff, students, and our exceptional global community, which now numbers over 56,000 alumni. So Chicago Booth has a very, very long history and successful history in this region. We first moved to Europe in 1994. We had a campus in Barcelona, which many of you may remember. In 2005, we relocated to our former London campus in the Woolgate Exchange, and then moved here a couple of years ago. And I would say over the past 28 or so years, the school has made an exceptional contribution to the higher education landscape in the region, graduated thousands of leaders who helped transform the world of business. We are excited, beyond excited, to be expanding our activities in London and broadening the school's impact and reach across EMEA. Ultimately, this is a hub for everything, a community hub for everything that we do in Europe, Middle East, and Africa more broadly, and anchored by this new state-of-the-art campus. The place looks nothing like what we saw 3 or 4 years ago when we first saw this building. It just looks stunning at this point. And the investment that we made, it's really a testament to the continued commitment that we have to our executive MBA program, to lifelong learning via non-degree executive programs that we hope to do here, and through alumni engagement through dynamic programs and access to booth partnerships with local universities and companies. Our global programs that we will run through the Rastandi Center for Social Sector Innovation and the Polsky Center will expand our reach even further. So our goal, our expectation, our aspiration, if you will, is that this campus will be a destination for thought-provoking programming, robust exchange of ideas, and a center for alumni, business leaders, and friends from across the region. So we're unique as a school. We're the only business school with a standalone campus in London and the only one with campuses on 3 continents, right? We have Chicago, London, and Hong Kong. We operate with the notion that we're a truly global school. What does that mean? That means that the world is the context for everything that we do. We want to have the best faculty from across the world. We want their work to have global impact. And we want to attract the best students from across the globe. And we want them to be leaders around the world. So if you look at our faculty, I think close to 30% of our tenure line faculty and clinical faculty have citizenship from a country outside the US. And I think if you looked at sort of the country of origin they're from, my guess it would be that the number would be sort of higher than even 50%. The EMBA program here in London currently has 120 students who live in 29 different countries across EMEA. And we attract students from around the world to our program in Chicago as well. Close to 40%, I think something like 39% of our incoming full-time MBA class are international students. So we are well positioned to grow our visibility and impact globally, given these campuses and the university centers in places like Beijing, Paris, and Delhi, which complement the locations. So I want to acknowledge the members of the EMEA cabinet of our Global Leaders Group, some of whom are here this evening. Thank you all for your service to the school and supporting our key initiatives in this region. I also want to say special thanks to Randy Krosner. Randy moved here a couple of years ago to be here for a few months to do the opening. Ended up being much longer than he thought. I don't think Randy ever complained, though, about being in London. I will say that. So Randy set up operations here, built relationships with our partners in the London community, and hosted many programs, including our Future of Capitalism series, Virtual Economic Outlook, and our Leading in London virtual and in-person open house events. We're also thrilled, I should mention, that we hired our new executive director a few months ago, Elizabeth O'Neill. She now leads Booth's external relations in London and across EMEA and oversees the daily operation of this campus. We're also creating, this is sort of new, a new global faculty in residence position, which will bring our Chicago faculty to stay in London for extended periods of time. So I sent an email to our faculty last week asking for expressions of interest and got a lot. Everybody wants to come and spend time in London. So my problem is going to be figuring out the rationing of it, which is not the fun part. And the UChicago community has just been incredibly helpful as we continue to expand. So I want to thank everybody here for your dedication to Booth and your support of the University of Chicago. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce UChicago President Paul Alivisatos. Paul is the 14th president of the University of Chicago, and he's the John MacArthur Distinguished Service Professor in the Department of Chemistry, the Pritzker School of Molecular Engineering, and the college. Paul is a phenomenal scientist and also an entrepreneur. He's done pioneering research in the field of nanomaterials that's demonstrated key applications of nanocrystals in areas such as biological imaging and renewable energy. His inventions are widely used in biomedicine and QLED TV displays, and his scientific advances have yielded more than 50 patents. Before joining UChicago as president in September of this past year, Paul was executive vice chancellor and provost of the University of California at Berkeley. Before that, he held up several positions at Berkeley, including being the Samsung Distinguished Professor of Nanoscience and Nanotechnology, the founding director of the Kavli Energy Nanoscience Institute, and director of the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Paul is a graduate, he's an alumnus of the college at UChicago, earned his bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1981, and his PhD in chemistry from Berkeley in 1986. Please join me in giving him a very, very warm welcome to Paul Alivisatos.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Agrawal, and thank you, Mara, for that kind introduction. And I'd also like to acknowledge the presence here of our Board of Trustees member, Tandian Rustandi. I don't know where you are, Tandian, you're here somewhere, but I want to thank you for being here. Okay. Indeed, London is a true global crossroads for finance, business, markets, and for so many other things. It truly is. And so it is a special moment, a truly special moment for the Chicago booth and for the University of Chicago. And Madhav, you said something very important just now, which is that Booth is well on its way to becoming a truly global school of business. And the implications of that are enormous. It means that we have campuses across the world and we interact with students and with businesses and with the world around us globally today in a completely different way than might have been the case years ago. Since you are now in the University of Chicago force field, we're going to now ask some questions. What is the origin of this phenomenon? What does it mean for the future? That's a UChicago thing. Actually, so we're going to go back a little bit in history, if you'll allow me. Our first president, William Rainey Harper, was a truly visionary person. And he thought about the following things. He thought about three things that the university absolutely should always be doing. It should be a place that invents continuously transformational educational experiences. It should have a faculty who create entirely new fields of knowledge. You saw the Nobel wall out of there, and I was very pleased when I went by it to see that there are a lot of empty spots on it still. And we should also be a university that engages in partnerships to help society overcome the greatest challenges that it faces. So those are three things that Harper said the university should really do. And a little echo there. And one thing that he did that may surprise you to know 125 years ago was at the same time that he established the university proper, he created the university extension, but he also did something else. He created the first correspondence school, anticipating the online learning that we do today during the COVID era. He did one other thing that is quite surprising to me. He had a group of our faculty get on trains and go all along the train lines from Chicago, teaching classes at every town along the way. Well, now you can see where Chicago Booth had got the idea of wanting to put our faculty on planes and bringing them here to teach in the global center of London. It's part and parcel of the engaged university that Harper envisioned at the very beginning at our formation. And so we belong as a university in the place where people come together and invent new things. And so that means we belong here in London, and the partnership is going to be a very, very strong one. It is, of course, a school that has invented so many amazing and wonderful things in the world of business that we all know of. The efficient market hypothesis, behavioral economics, and Booth today, the school, also is open to its partnership with the whole of the University of Chicago, not just the whole of the world. And we have so many interesting developments that Rajesh, you essentially referred to a moment ago. A little while ago, we created a department or a school of molecular engineering. I'm actually now a faculty member in it, very proudly. And inside that molecular engineering, we're growing programs at the rate you couldn't believe almost in quantum information science and technology, in biological engineering, in data science and artificial intelligence. These are the areas that are going in the future to be creating, in partnership with Chicago Booth, entire new economies, entire new ways of facing the greatest challenges of the world. So as we think about the global Chicago Booth, in partnership with the Global University of Chicago and in partnership with businesses, foundations, nonprofits, and governments, we imagine that we are going to be taking a real run at some of the hardest problems in the world, whether it be climate and energy, stay tuned to see all the things that we're planning in that area, or whether it be in areas as difficult as urban inequality and so many other problems that we have to face as societies. Now, I'm confident that this is really going to work here, and I'm a scientist. I like to test hypotheses, and so yesterday I had the chance to visit with the EMBA students who were here on this campus. Are any of you here? I don't know. Hands, you see? Okay, so I have to tell you, it was very energizing to be here with those students, and I asked them, what's the deal here? What brought you here? And you'll be happy to know that the two things that brought them were that our faculty got on the plane and came to teach, and it was the real Chicago Booth experience that we take great care on, and they came because they wanted to be in the crossroads of London. They really wanted that. That partnership is going to be very special, and some really great things are going to come from it. So I'm excited, and I'm thrilled, and I just think it's a wonderful development here. I'm going to turn it over now to our next speaker, Randy Krasner. Randy, as was mentioned, is the Deputy Dean for Executive Programs and the Norman R. Bobbins Professor of Economics. Randy, take it away.
Well, I am truly, truly thrilled to be here and truly thrilled to see everyone here. As Madhav mentioned, this has been a little bit delayed, but I always had faith that we would make it through, and this is just a magnificent payoff. And so I'm deeply, deeply indebted to the President and the President's office, to the Board of Trustees, to Madhav, and to so many, and to our alums who supported the idea of really building out a new campus in London and putting it in such a prominent location and really supporting that. And so I'm just thrilled about that. Also want to thank very much David Booth, who unfortunately can't be with us, who has been super supportive of all of this. I also want to thank the architects, A Studio, because I think they did a magnificent job. As Madhav mentioned, when we arrived here, it was raw space of 3 floors that didn't connect with each other. And we had this notion that we wanted to create a campus. We wanted to create one community here. And so we articulated that, but we didn't articulate the specifics of the staircase or the other pieces. They put that together, and so that was, and I think it's been super successful. We got the building delivered on time and under budget in the 3rd week of March of 2020, the same week I issued the work from home order. So for the next 18 months, it was 40,000 square feet and me. And it was a little lonely. The walls were all white, but one of the things that my partner Dave and I did when we first got here is we wanted to engage our alums in things that we were passionate about, because we knew that many of our alums were also passionate about it. So we did events around art. And that got a conversation going with some very, very generous alums, Katie and Felix Robbins, whose artwork is now on loan in this campus. It was such a gift, because I was coming in, there was no one here. Now I had all these friends who were on the wall. Now I didn't really talk to them, but I was just happy that they were. I was so delighted that they were around, and so that was really wonderful. The team that built the stairwell was great, because that was the key thing. Would it be delivered on time and under budget? If the stairwell fit, it would work. If it didn't fit, it wouldn't. And it did. And so that team, and including university facilities, we work very closely with them. Nick Nichols is here from there, our consultant who's helped on all of our buildings. Leanne Paul is here. We couldn't have put this together without working with the university, and couldn't have gotten it as we did. So I'm super grateful to them. And I'm also incredibly grateful to our staff, because as you can imagine, this was a challenge. So people were moving. I mean, we literally had people were putting their belongings into crates on the Monday of that week that I issued the work from home order. And I said, finish packing, don't come back. And if you can't finish today, come in tomorrow, but don't come back. We moved the crates down here on Thursday, and then no one was in for a very long time. So it was a challenge to keep everyone together, to keep the spirit, but they were amazing. And so I want to really thank everyone who has devoted the staff here, as well as the sports staff in Chicago, for keeping us together, because it was really keeping community together. And that's the key issue that I want to talk to Caroline and Derek about. And Dean Rajan already briefly introduced my panelists here. I'm not going to go into details on that, but Derek is one of really kind of the key people at the university who's been thinking about these issues of civic engagement and community engagement for a long time, and he's done a lot of work on that. And so Derek, maybe we could start with a definition of what do we really mean by civic engagement and community engagement, and then in the university context.
Sure. Well, first, pleasure to be with you all. Beautiful space, wonderful group. Do you all get this kind of turnout for all your events? This is amazing.
Everything.
We need some of you to come to Hyde Park as well to sort of some of our meetings. But I would say that there's a couple of ways we think about civic engagement. Fundamentally, what it is, it's really about looking at the way in which the university and the people within the university can have a positive impact on the people in our community and the places around the university. And when we talk about community, there's different layers to that. There's the South Side. For those who don't know, University of Chicago is situated on the south side of the city, and there's a lot of neighborhoods around where there's a significant need. And so what are we doing to enhance lives there? There's also the city dimension, and the University of Chicago is one of the leading institutions in the city and is turned to and looked to and has deep partnerships with the mayor and other leaders there. How are we having an impact there? Similarly with the region. And in Chicago, it's a pretty close-knit community. There's a lot of work that's looking at how can we expand opportunity regionally. And so we think about that dimension. But I think also related to this location is we think about it globally, and there's an opportunity there. We have these centers around the world where the University of Chicago has presence. And I think another dimension that we need to really dig in on is how do we do civic engagement in those various centers around the world, working with the communities that are local to those centers. Now, in terms of how we go about the work, there's two cuts at that. First, we have a framework that really is about leveraging the resources and the strengths of the university for impact. So I often, when I talk about civic engagement, I make the point, the University of Chicago is not the city of Chicago. We're not a bank. We're not a foundation. We're a university. So it's very important, if you want the engagement to be authentic to the institution, that you leverage off of what the institution does. So what do universities do? Obviously, research and teaching are at the forefront. And so we have a variety of civic engagement activities, not just my office, but Madoff, deans, others that are engaged with, that have faculty involved in working on some of the toughest challenges in our city and our communities, doing their research to help solve those problems, and a lot of opportunities for students to engage and get experiential opportunities where they're working in nonprofits and organizations and contributing. But the other thing universities do is we're anchors in our community. Unlike a company that could pick up and move and get recruited, University of Chicago is not going anywhere. And we are the largest employer on the South Side. We're the largest purchaser on the South Side. We're the largest developer on the South Side. These are things we do in daily course as part of our function. How do you leverage that as well for impact? How do you create more jobs for people in the local community at your university? How do you buy from local businesses and support the local economy? So that's kind of a big part of how we do it, leveraging those assets. And the last thing I want to just tie in off of President Alivasado's comment is that at the heart of everything is partnership. It's very critical that we keep in mind the university can't do these things on its own. It should not do these things on its own. We have as much to learn from other partners as we can contribute, whether that's community stakeholders, whether that's corporate partners, whether it's the city, foundations. And so all the activities that we engage with, there's always a partnership element to it that brings us together to, I think, increase the impact. So that's kind of what it is. We've been developing this model over a decade plus. President Alivasatos has challenged the entire institution with this notion of the engaged university. And so we're thinking about how we can elevate our work even more with that theme in mind. And so it's exciting, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with Booth London as part of this effort.
All right, thanks so much, Derek. Now, Caroline, actually, it was in discussions with Caroline that some of the themes emerged for this because she's just such a thoughtful person on these issues. We started talking about, well, what really do we want to make as the theme for this panel and for our real official opening. And so I'm really indebted to Caroline for that. And she's an adjunct professor. She's also the director of the Rossandi Center on Social Enterprise and Innovation. And so maybe if you could talk a little bit about taking some of the big picture framework that Derek was just describing. And so what does this mean in a business school? Because some people would say, well, business school is about business and making money. Why are you thinking about civic engagement, community engagement? How does that work?
Well, it's a great question, and it's going to start with your point on partnership, and then it's going to come back to you because we do so much together. But as I think about our students, our alumni, our broader community, most people have an issue that they care about, something very deeply. If you pause for a moment and stop listening to me and just think inward, you think about something that you care about. I have a nephew with disabilities, and I care about it very deeply. And so then you think about how sometime in your life, in your journey, you'll have an impact on that issue. And what we find with business students today and alumni is that people are looking to use their skills to have an impact on an issue that they care about. So for some, that's joining a nonprofit board. We have our students shadow nonprofit boards in the city of Chicago, and our alumni connect with nonprofit boards, and we've built out a toolkit that works globally for those looking to engage with nonprofits. We also support those in our community, again, the student alumni community, our executive MBA students who are interested in developing an innovation, who have a new idea, who figure something out. And we're part of the New Venture Challenge, and the Edwardson Social New Venture Challenge is a social track for those looking at impact maximizing ventures, but with those same business skills. And we look to support all of the folks in our community who are interested in careers that touch on impact, whether it's a pivot to working in business and then working in nonprofit, or working within a firm and thinking about ESG and what does that mean today? How do I unpack that and understand something that is now part of the discussion in finance that did not exist? It was footnote 10 years ago and certainly wasn't part of the conversation 20 years ago. So how this ties back to partnership and how I think about our work in London is that when we meet folks where they are on their journey, the possibilities are endless. And one of the places that we've brought it to life is by working with Derek's team in a community in Chicago, in South Shore, where our students are part of a long-standing effort on the part of the university to build a connection in South Shore and really help revitalize a retail corridor there. And what's so powerful about that is that I know, and I spent time like President Alivasatos with our students on Saturday, and know that the potential is there for more partnership and more of that kind of impact here.
That's really great. And another inspiration for this is actually a report that Derek co-authored with his counterparts from Melbourne and from here in London about global engagement, civic engagement globally. And I know you've been having meetings here in the building with your partners from Melbourne and King's College. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on with that, bringing these partnerships into practice?
So we had a great session earlier today, and this partnership started about 5 years ago or so, where you had my counterparts at King's College London and University of Melbourne. There was a conference that we all had attended, actually at the University of Melbourne, and one of the panels was around the role of universities in their local communities. And we were 3 institutions that were all kind of doing our own thing. We had our own approach to engagement that we were trying to build, but we were working kind of within our own silos. And one of the takeaways from the conference was that by coming together through a global collaboration, perhaps there was an opportunity to elevate this issue within the discussion of higher education, where before, on the global stage at least, including even the domestic stage, sometimes civic engagement is a little bit off to the side. When you're talking about major issues in higher education, it may be a little bit off to the side. So we got together, and the first project we took on was actually to develop a report called Advancing University Engagement. You can look it up. You might find it interesting. And we tried to come up with some quantitative or concrete ways to measure how a university is doing with respect to engagement. Because one of the challenges is it's soft, and what does it mean? It's soft and mushy. People have difficulty understanding. So we came up with a set of measurements as to how you can see if a university is doing well. And the idea was actually to put this out there in the world, and perhaps some of the organizations that rank universities could incorporate this into the rankings, which would get, even though no one really cares about rankings, I should say that to qualifier, it could get the attention if this becomes something that matters in that regard. And interestingly, we were just having our session today. When we had started, no one was doing it. Since then, Times Higher Ed has a ranking that's called the Impact Ranking that they had created, and now QS actually incorporated some new elements. And some of these rankings are doing it because they've been polling students and whatnot, and the student interest in this is off the charts. Students are looking to see what institutions, how engaged is the institution to decide if I want to go there for college. So that was the first set of work. The next set we're actually going to do is to try to develop a set of what we call blueprints, case studies of best practice, and really explain how you do these things. And so we would talk about what we're doing around nonprofit capacity building and lay it out, or other King's might talk about what it's doing with service learning, and then create a warehouse where this information and these ideas are accessible to multiple universities across the world, and start to build a community in that regard. I think that if we can get universities to come together and really start to speak on this and to elevate the practice, we have a good chance of elevating the importance of civic engagement within higher ed. And I will say, King's is right around the corner. So I really would like to work with the Chicago Booth London team to really become an instrumental part of that partnership we have with King's. They were wowed by the space, by the way, when they came today. And I think that it could be a really unique way to strengthen some of the local ties by getting you all involved in that partnership.
Yeah, that's super great, because I know that the staff and the students are very, very interested in that. And I had brought some other people in a little bit earlier on, and they were really wowed by it too. So it's really been great to be able to use the space in that way. And I think, as you said, I mean, it's a great University of Chicago way. We're trying to build metrics. We're trying to do something in a systematic way. Certainly, everyone wants, you can feel very good about talking about civic engagement and community, but we want to do it in a way that's measurable, because it's only in a way that's measurable that you can actually move the needle. You can then get feedback, and you can then figure out how to do it better. And that's what we're always looking for. And as you said, more and more people are taking note of this. The Financial Times, for example, recently put out a responsible business report. And I was thrilled that Chicago Booth was the only business school that won in 2 categories. Now, it's no surprise that we won in the category of research. We kind of always win on that. Sendhil Mullainathan has done some just spectacular work on, well, he's done really amazing work in general of thinking about the interaction between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. You know, often people just say, oh, well, artificial intelligence, that's just going to hollow out all the jobs, it'll take everything away. Sendel's not so sure about that. And what's very interesting is to look at the interaction between the two. And by thinking about that, he said, well, you know, we're using AI more and more in healthcare because it can help to reduce costs, it can help to identify problems. But the challenge with that is that maybe all of the data aren't perfect. Maybe the models aren't perfect. And so he identified how there could be unintended consequences of allocating resources away from certain communities, from some poor communities, some minority communities that no one intended to do, but you know, thought, oh, well, we're just using AI and we're using these models. But it's because of the way the data came in, it's the way the models were set up. And so very, very interesting on that. So I was delighted that they recognized his work there. And then we had an alum who also won, and he's been doing some spectacular work on people with autism. I think his startup is called Autism to Go, or Autism on the Go, and trying to help people who have autism, the families provide support. And you know, it's something very closely associated with what we do through the Restandi Center. So it's really nice that that's been recognized. And I know that you're doing a number of things, other things here in London, and so I'd love to hear more about those.
Yeah, so I have, picking up on that thread of research to practice, I want to share something that is very much was very prescient relative to the pandemic, in that Professor Pradeep Chantagunta, who many of our executive MBA students know and alumni know well, done some research that demonstrated that if you paired a micro entrepreneur, someone running a small business in a country without substantial resources to do so, in Rwanda, Uganda, where there were just few and didn't have folks who didn't have business training, even though there are many people there who do, that if they had some coaching, he had a hypothesis that their businesses would outperform those who didn't get coaching. And he ran an experiment and found that to be true. So started working with Grow Movement, which is an organization that matches business coaches to those micro entrepreneurs. And so during the pandemic, we were able to match many of the folks here in our London community with those entrepreneurs. And just a wonderful example of a way to connect across this broad region. Now, as we think about now being present here in this space and in person, which is just so immense and joyful, we're thrilled to be collaborating with PTI, which I never use an acronym without spelling it out, although I think PTI is the brand. It's the Prince's Teachers Institute, and Keith Breslauer, who is an alum of our program and sits on my advisory council, is chair of the PTI, of the trustees. And it's an organization that provides professional development for teachers in tough schools throughout the UK. And they do trainings in various locations, but don't have a London location. And so we're thrilled to be able to open our doors. I mean, this space is here for our students. We do classes here. It's open as a conference center. I met earlier with an alum who's planning a dinner here for 50 next week that will be an event and presentation and mingling. We hope you will use it, but we're also thrilled to be able to open our doors to a community organization for teachers to come in and meet and convene.
Yeah, this is really great, and that's a very important point. The building is here. We want you to use it. I don't want it to be empty again. I want you to come through and use it, and just think about ways in which you can do it, whether it's for executive education, for training programs for your organization. Because we're doing training programs here. That was actually the first, back in September when we really started to open up. That was the first thing that was done here, was an executive training program for a British insurance company. For the various community organizations, for holding board meetings or other things. We really want this to be the hub, to be really the focus of so much activity, and also the focus of university activity. So I had a wonderful conversation, and it was actually the first conversation I had on this stage with a doctor from the School of Medicine. Dr. Funmi Obalade. And she's doing some absolutely amazing work on genetic markers of cancer. And she's an incredible force. She's just a really wonderful person. And also what's wonderful about academics is that I wanted her to give a talk, and academics are kind of relatively inexpensive. All I had to do was give her an office. She said, "Oh, I'd love to give a talk." So she gave a talk, and it was for our students and a few others who had come by. And I didn't know this, but she started a company that went through the New Venture Challenge. And so I was asking her about some of the things that she was doing, and she's really an incredible person. And she started the story, which is just such an engaging way to start a story. She said, "As my daughter and I were walking down Mount Kilimanjaro," what a great way to start a story. Everybody's on the edge of their seat. And she said she was complaining about having to do another grant proposal on this. And her daughter said to her, "Well, why don't you start a company?" She said, "Well, I don't know anything about starting a company. All those people at Booth know how to start a company. They don't know anything about genes, so it's a perfect combination." And that's something that I think is unique about Booth at as part of the University of Chicago. Many of our competitors here are standalone business schools. They don't have all the resources that we can bring to bear from the university. And that's why I wanted to talk about other opportunities, other things that you have see that you could do here or that you've done in other parts of the world that really bring all of those resources together to make a difference in a local community.
Well, when Caroline was speaking, it made me really think about, because the examples you were giving are things that we do in Chicago. And we have this notion, this saying, local to global, which is that sometimes programs that you run in Chicago would translate very well to other global contexts. And I think that we could start by looking at some things we do. We work with the Polsky Center, for example, at Booth. We have a thing called the Small Business Growth Program, which is supporting local entrepreneurs with capacity building supports. No reason why you couldn't have a London version of that. We started through our office, now it's run through the Harris School, something called the Civic Leadership Academy, which is a professional leadership development program for public sector and nonprofit leaders in the city of Chicago. And many people who come through that go on to be commissioners and heads of organizations, very esteemed careers. No reason we couldn't think about creating something like that here as well. I would say that the Booth is one of the strongest partners that we have within the Office of Civic Engagement. You have people like George Wu, who started a capacity-built leadership development program for African American leaders in Chicago, partnering with the National Urban League. You have Marianne Bertrand and the Inclusive Economy Lab, which was set up to think about how research can be used to address economic and income inequality and poverty. There's a host of things that I think would translate quite beautifully here, but where we would want to start, it's very important that when you're doing engagement, you don't do it where it's one directional, where the university shows up and says, we have all the ideas, you need this program and that. We actually need to start by engaging with the community and the local stakeholders and understanding what do they see as some of the most important challenges, what do they see as some of the areas where they think that they would love to have the University of Chicago play a role in helping them address. And then once we know that, we can see what do we have that currently exists that could match up, and if not, what are those gaps where maybe we can create new programs. So that two-directional engagement, that idea of mutual benefit, I think is fundamental for the engagement to be authentic, sustainable, and well-received. And I think the sky is really the limit for what we could do there, to the extent that there's the interest both at Booth and in the city.
I think that's exactly right, and I think that's exactly how we think about things, building relationships.
Yes.
And it's not about coming in with the ideas, with the answers. Nobody has all the answers. You need to learn, you need to collect the data, you need to understand and really build long-term sustainable relationship. And that's what we've been doing here in London, and this building has, and actually I know there were a lot of challenges during COVID, but being able to use Teams, being able to use Zoom to keep connected with people, continue to build on our relationships have been great, and now they're manifesting in the real world rather than the Zoom and Teams world, but here. But I know that I'm sure there are a lot of both our students and alums here would be interested to know how to get more engaged in some of these opportunities that you're talking about. So
Yeah.
you might want to talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So the first thing you can do is sign up for our newsletter, because then we'll email you and tell you about these opportunities. Many of them include an opportunity to start by connecting with a person. We have 9 executives and residents at the Rostandi Center who are available to meet with our students and alumni and ESG, sustainability, impact investing, philanthropy. And so they can really work with folks there on your domain expertise and your interests. For folks in the broader community, come find me. Come find me at the reception. My email is carolyn.grossman@chicagobooth.edu. Come find me and tell me what you're thinking about, because to Derek's point, that's how we're going to build something, not when I'm just on my computer contemplating what it could be. So please do that.
Yeah, and we've also had a great partnership with the Mayor's Office of London and Partners, so that has been wonderful, and we will be having events here. We were planning to have events here, and it's been a little bit delayed, but we'll be doing that. And so now what I'd like to do is turn it over to you, if you might have some questions that you want to put to the members of our panel. We'll have, I think, some people with microphones that are around. And so does anyone have a question for either Caroline or for Derek? Yes, we have a question here. So could you just wait till the microphone comes, and please identify yourself when you ask the question. Thanks for breaking the ice.
Thank you. I'm Guillaume Piard. I'm a full-time alum from 2015 in Chicago. One thing that really struck my mind when you were speaking was what current students are thinking about and what they want to do in terms of impact. So when I graduated, I was between 13 and 15 in Chicago. 50% of the class was either going from investment banking to consulting or from consulting to investment banking, and it was all about making money. And you did mention that people are very focused on having an impact in what they do professionally now. Can you be more data specific? Has the pool changed? Are students really now, post-COVID, thinking about, I'm sure they are actually, but could you illustrate how the mindset has shifted from when I graduated, or perhaps from when other people graduated before me, to what the student mindset is now?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways to think about it. One is that most students graduate from business school in some debt and need to pay it back, and also go to business school to learn management and get some hard business training. I actually am a Booth alum. I spent 4 years before Booth teaching. I taught in a big public school in New York City. I worked at a nonprofit. I worked at a social enterprise. I came to Booth and I went to brand management. I ran a $600 million salad dressing business at Kraft so that I would learn how to run something. And now I get to do my best at running a social impact organization within the business school. So we are very supportive of people who want to take that path. But what we find is that more and more students today are saying, but what will my footprint look like? I think that since you were in school, even in 2015, we've become more aware of the planet and of how what might be ahead. And people are asking what they can do. And much of what they're realizing is what they can do is go get a job in a bank, in a consulting firm, in a big company, but ask tough questions about engagement and ultimately be on a path to directly having an impact. So I teach a class that touches on a lot of these issues, and bring in several chief sustainability officers to speak to students, and most of them say, I'm the first chief sustainability officer at Mondelez, at AB InBev, at wherever. And so, that's really the conversation that we're having today.
Thank you.
Hi. I actually wanted to add to your answer.
Oh, good.
So my name is Uchain Mchukwu. I am actually a pensions lawyer, and I am not an alum. I was part of the NVC through an old partner. And we were finalists. My company, we do diversity, equity, and inclusion in pensions and benefits. Our company has grown from first headquarters in Chicago. Now we have a second headquarters here in London. So it's grown very quickly. And we do DE&I and ESG. That's our focus for institutional investors around ESG and pensions. And I will tell you that since we were part of the NVC program, we've had University of Chicago interns every single semester. They are so interested, they are at the top of their classes, and they want to make an impact. So we don't even ask. They reach out. I'm not a U Chicago alumni. I'm an attorney, but I was part of the program, but I'm not an alumni. However, we are constantly interviewing U Chicago Booth and U Chicago undergraduate students in economics who want to come work for our tiny little company that's now global.
Well, that's
Great.
fantastic.
That's fantastic.
Our students are always looking for interesting work.
A couple of questions here.
Hi, great hearing you, Caroline and Derek. I'm Mena Sahi. I'm a Boot alum from 2010, full-time Chicago. And when I went to business school, I kind of knew I want to go and work in the development sector. And I think I walked into Julie Morton's office. She was then the director for career services in my first year. And I said, I don't know what I want to do, but it has to be in the impact space. And she really helped me out, bring a lot of right organizations to campus and find my part. And I've dedicated the last 12 years and will continue to do so thereafter. So it's great to hear this from you all and get to see that this is the panel we chose for today. But I'd love to hear your views on how it comes together on campus and within the Boot thinking, because we are, after all, known as a capitalistic school, right? We are known as the school where free market theory evolves and the thinking on the capitalistic world evolves. So how does that come to play with the whole thinking on impact and social impact? And how is it going together? Because I see it going together, but I don't know if other alums are seeing it going together.
So for some, it comes together, and for some, it doesn't. That's what makes our community incredible. It's diverse. I will also say that when I get back on Wednesday, I get back tomorrow, and then on Wednesday, I'll be in the classroom in a new course, Perspectives in Capitalism, that will be looking at these questions. So we have a lineup of 9 faculty members, each speaking about what their take on capitalism today looks like. We'll have Raghu Rajan, Richard Thaler, Michael Kramer, so a couple Nobel Prize winners in there, and then discussion sections with students to grapple with these questions. And we had almost 300 students interested in a seat in the class the first time we're offering it. So there is a critical mass of people who want to think about this. There are people who do it by saying, I want to go to South Shore, a mile away from campus, and help roll up my sleeves and revitalize a retail corridor. I have people who say, I want to work, take a lab class and think about an organization in London, the Patron Capital, and again, Keith Breslauer brought us this project on the WISH Fund that helps think about financing models for women who've been abused and need safe housing. So there's never going to be one. I mean, I could go on. I'm not going to list. People want to have a glass of wine. Like I'm not going to give you the whole list. But it comes together for different people in different ways. And when you were a student, there was not a Restandi Center. there was a nascent, we will be celebrating 10 years of social impact at Booth, and the Dean's Office and Tandy and Rastandi have supported us to become permanent at Booth, meeting student and faculty demand, and it's just an honor.
And one thing I would add is how it's coming together more, is that part of what influences these decisions of what people want to engage in and what not is the culture of the place and the culture of the university. And I've been at the university for 10 years, and I've seen an evolution in terms of the culture of the university and the embrace of having impact, civic impact, across the university. And I remember when I first got here, I would go and meet with every dean, and some of them were wondering, why was I in their office? Now all of them have civic engagement staff of their own. And so when that happens, faculty see that, students see that, and this becomes one of the things that's how a Rastandi Center evolves. It becomes one of the offerings at the school. Now, not everyone has to partake, but it's an opportunity for everyone. The other thing I will say, which I think is really important as to how the culture's been built, is that in order to do civic engagement, you're not necessarily expected to become a social justice warrior, let's say. You might be wanting to go become a CEO. We want CEOs to have the civic sensibility, because when they're in their companies or they're in their private sector, they're thinking about things a little bit differently than someone who doesn't have that civic sensibility. So by making it clear that, and our framework is such that there's an opportunity for anyone, no matter what your interest, to engage in some way, I think that helps bring it together for students at the Booth School, for faculty at the Booth School, and in other parts of the university.
And on that, because obviously we're very much, people often parody what University of Chicago and Chicago Booth is in terms of being very, very narrow. And so I did something to sort of take that on head on. 2 years ago, we had the 50th anniversary of Milton Friedman's famous essay on corporate social responsibility. So we did Corporate Social Responsibility Revisited, and we started off in our Hong Kong campus, brought then to our London campus, and then to Chicago, which you could do virtually. And obviously, you can't do 8 hours in one space on Zoom or Teams. You have to break that up. And we started off with remarks from Tandy, and we started off with one of our graduates who's one of the vice presidents of the Asian Development Bank. We had discussions about all sorts of different approaches that people take. Mark Carney, I interviewed Mark Carney and getting his views on sustainable development and the role that something like University of Chicago can play, and a number of our faculty members do, on getting measurement right. And then the conference rolled into a more academic conference that Luigi Zingales and the Stigler Center were running after that. But one of the most interesting things was that I ran a poll in each of the different areas. So, do you agree or disagree with Milton Friedman? And I sort of described what I took a little excerpt out from that. And there were a number of surprising things on that. So first is that it was very consistent around the globe. I was quite surprised at that. I thought people would have had different views in Europe than in the US and Asia. Very, very consistent on that. Second, only 10% said uncertain. I gave people a weasel, they could weasel out of it and say, because it's always easy to try to do that. Oh, well, I don't want to take a stand. So only 10% of the people said that in each case. But the interesting thing was that 60% said that they disagreed with Friedman. And now, of course, this was open to the public, but it was disproportionately number of people who were from, associated with Booth or the University of Chicago. So I think that's an incredible evolution, and I think that's a very important talking point to have, that we're not monolithic. We're not one view. There were, I think maybe we were a little bit more of a particular view maybe 50 years ago, but that's not the case. That's certainly not the case anymore. And so looking at the different faculty members from Raghu Rajan to Steve Kaplan and to others who were on there with very, very different views, I think it's a great way to illustrate that we're about the ideas. And what's great about what Friedman did is we're still debating that question that he posed. And that's what Chicago and Chicago Booth is all about getting the question right. You can totally disagree with the answer, but we're still debating it because he put it so starkly. And so I think the point that you make is a very important one, that we make sure that people know that we have this breadth of interest and approaches at Booth. That doesn't mean that we don't have Friedman's view represented. Friedman's view certainly is represented, but it is one view. It is by no means the view. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Robert Ahom Kalinzi, EXP 2000. I'm beginning to feel a little old here. Everybody's been mentioning 2015, the rest. When you still had the Barcelona campus. My question is on the A of the EMEA, which is Africa. So let me come clean. My day job is Deputy Minister of Trade Industry, Minister of Industry for Ghana. My interest is, I've heard a number of things talk about civic, etc. This is the London campus. By its definition, your target is a little further than Chicago. And London has a lot of history, particularly when it comes to Africa. Many headquarters, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, have their HQ here. There's a long history with a lot of engagement in Africa. So when I hear great examples like Uganda and the link and that, what comes to my mind is, I'm not sure if it comes under the civic, but here's the question. Continent of 54 countries, 1.2 billion people, going to be 2 billion in the next 50 years, grappling with market economy, how to make it work, how to industrialize, how to ensure that we bring all those lessons, the reason why I wanted to go to Booth in the first place, the economics, the research, the finance, to answer questions that are prevalent today. And I think that is a huge opportunity for this particular campus. You have got so many people, both not just from the, let me say, the straightforward education, but the executive element, who would appreciate Booth bringing its wealth of knowledge to research around how does a country like Ghana, which we're going through, in 2022, put an industrial strategy together on a market-based economy with the world we live in. Now, to me, that's a tough one. And that's the one I'd like Booth to engage in. That's why I'm here.
I think that's for you.
So pre-COVID, we took some steps in that direction, and went to Lagos and talked with many people from the region, mostly people from Nigeria, to try to get more people engaged, to be aware of what we have to offer, and to get more people coming through Booth Education. And I'm really gratified to see the number of people from Nigeria. We've always had some people from Nigeria in the program, but really increased dramatically. And I think by engaging with people to make them aware that we have this great program, you should come to the program. Providing support for people who come to the program is one way to do that. We have a number of alums, including an important alum at the African Development Bank, and so engaging with them and seeing what we can do there is really valuable. As Caroline had pointed out, we have a number of our faculty who are doing research in Africa and sort of building that out further. And the ideal would be to get to something like what you're talking about, of trying to get a very systematic way of thinking about how to accelerate development and an inclusive development program. And I think we have the resources to be able to do that. And we'll definitely talk further on that.
Yeah, I wanted to call out, I'm going to call him out, but Juan de Pablo, I don't know if he's still here, but he's our Executive Vice President for Global Engagement. So a lot of our work with other countries from the university-wide context is led by his department. So maybe you and Juan can also connect afterwards, because I know that he's been thinking, I know President Alvasados has been very interested as well in how we can increase our connection to Africa. So great question, great comment.
Great. Any other questions? Yes. Sorry, I wasn't looking over. The lights are in my eyes, so I couldn't see people over here.
Hello. Okay. My name is Tom Raber, and I'm EXP 15 graduate. I have two questions. One is, why has it taken so long for this having an impact in the community to take place? When I did my executive MBA, there was no engagement at all with the local community, and I suppose it was the same based on what you're saying in Chicago. And I was just wondering, I appreciate this is not only a Chicago question, it's a more broader question. Why is it taking so long for everyone to get engaged? That's question one. Question two is, Chicago Booth is the only global program with offices or campuses around the world, and are we collectively making the most out of that?
Why don't you start with the first question? Or one of you guys start with the first
Well, you probably would have to ask the people before me who didn't do anything, as opposed to asking me. Because since I got here, we have been doing stuff. But I would say that a big part of the why, what triggered the change is a different twist, is it comes from the leadership. So you need to have the president of the university articulating and committed to the cause of having impact, for it to really take hold. People follow the lead. You know, the president can help set the culture. When the president of the university, in his inaugural address, says the theme of my presidency is the engaged university, that has an impact. That resonates. Deans, others pay attention to that and think about how can we help to contribute to that. And I think that you had, probably 20 so years ago, you started having presidents who were more embracing that concept more openly, and you started to see some change, and I think you'll see even more change. I think also part of it is, as we've talked about, Caroline talked about, these issues of inequality, those sorts of issues, they're just more on the mind of the young people for today, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I was talking to my wife the other day, and she told me about a young 18-year-old, he has a sustainability plan for his life. Has anyone heard of that? I'd never even heard of that before. But he has a sustainability plan. This is what they're thinking about at very young ages. So I think that the institutions also need to keep up with the students and the young people and the next generation of what they're looking to and making sure they're offering things. And I think that has also played a role. And I think that the other thing is that it used to be, at least thinking about from the university perspective, it used to be that doing this kind of work, it was almost like you were taking away from what a true purpose of the university was. And you might have faculty or others doing it, but they kind of did it almost undercover. And now it's been articulated in a way that you don't have to compromise the essence of a university to also have impact. It's not you're choosing one or the other. You can do excellent research that also impacts critical issues in the world. Or you can be teaching students, and part of the education is getting them that experience in South Shore, working on stuff that maybe in their future life they'll work on. So I think that some people broke down the tension that was existing between, if you do civic, you're not being true to the knowledge creation, and they've actually brought them together, and that has, I think, also made a change. So, you know, I don't know if that fully answers, but that's my take on it.
Well, I think if you also envision the historical traditional university, if you envision Oxford and Cambridge and
That's
the
right.
quad at UChicago, which was built based on that, you have square spaces and the doors open and close to the inside so that everybody's facing each other and you're building a community. And that community is incredibly important. But that's a history and tradition that was rooted in a different conception of the university than we have today. And so there are places on campuses that I've gotten to know, and we've done it at Chicago in the last 20 years, where you turn those doors outward. And so it's literal, and symbolic, but it also actually makes a difference.
The other thing I would say is that at least for speaking for Chicago, and it might translate here as well, there's also the recognition now that the destiny of the university is inextricably tied to the destiny of the community. You can't be in an island among yourself. And so if you want to have a strong university, you need to have strong communities. And you need to work towards that with community and vice versa. And I think that notion of shared destiny, shared experience is also something that's a game changer. And President Albasato speaks to that as well very eloquently. So those are a few things, I think.
I mean, you can just see the commitment. This was the theme that really excited me to propose to the president. Obviously, the president is really excited about that. We have, a spectacular person who's you've been in your that role for like 10 years.
10 years.
That's
10
right.
years, a decade.
And so a full decade being engaged in that. Caroline taking this incredible tradition and with the Restandi Center forward, and it's something that is just super, super important. I think to a number of us personally, as well as more broadly institutionally. And I think because we're now at the end of our time, that's a great place to end. So first, I wanted to thank both of you, not just for being on the panel, but for all the work that you do at the university and Booth with our students, alums, and faculty, because this is just super, super important. So let's thank them so much. And I want to thank all of you for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to Madhav to close us out.
So I stand between you and a great reception in this amazing place. I did want to embarrass somebody, his name was mentioned, but I would like Felix and Katie, if you're here, to stand up. I want to thank you for lending your art and for making this place such a vibrant and incredible place. Thank you so much.
Ghana is concerned, there's a lovely Ghanaian artist that's here that's working together with Apple in doing most extraordinary things, and the nobility of Ghana, of your country, really comes out, and it's for all of us to appreciate it, and it's here for all of you to enjoy.
So again, we couldn't be, this is a really big day. This is a momentous day in our school's history, and I'm so thrilled all of you could be here to share it with us. I want to thank President Alvisatos again for coming out today to help us inaugurate. We spoke about rankings and metrics, and I'm not allowed to say this, so I'll just say, tonight you might wake up early in the morning and find that we've been ranked the #1 business school. So I'll just leave it at that.
Let's go celebrate.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.